Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Emma.
I'm Zara.
Last week, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, accused Coles and Woolworths of unlawfully misleading customers through discount pricing claims. The latest Roy Morgan Trust data tells us that Coles and Woolies are some of Australian shoppers' least trusted brands. But so many of us can't help but gravitate towards their special buys. So what keeps drawing us in? Consumers are naturally drawn to reduced prices in a cost of living crisis, but psychological factors can also significantly influence our purchasing behaviours. Zara, how do you feel about a discount sale? Are you a sucker for a good deal?
Like the biggest sucker that's ever existed.
Yeah.
I think all of this news about there being, allegedly misleading practice made me realise how uncritical I am when I am shopping. I won't even think twice. If I see a downward arrow and a big price, I will think that I'm getting a bargain.
Well,
no second thoughts.
Don't beat yourself up too much because you're certainly not alone. I find it really hard to walk past those big bright labels. They light up the supermarket aisles. You can't help but be drawn in. But that pull, which is strong enough, firstly, to convince us to buy stuff we genuinely don't need, and B, to delude us into thinking that we somehow might be saving money from buying things, it's no accident. So the ACCC has launched separate legal proceedings against Coles and Woolworths. These are the supermarket giants, of course, that control around 2/3 of the supermarket sector. And the federal court action relates to Woolies' prices dropped and Coles' down deals.
Now, and before we go on, I think we should probably just quickly summarise what we know, which is that the ACCC accused Coles and Woolies of misleading customers across a range of 500 staple items. That was between 2021 and 2023. The ACCC argues that Coles and Woolies breached customer law through price spiking. So that's when products are briefly made more expensive before being reduced to a price that it was more expensive or the same as before. For example, an item sold for $10 is increased to $15, but then the next month it's reduced back down to $12.
So this got me thinking about the science behind sales and how that might be used to influence customers. So, we know that food and household goods have become more expensive over the last 2 years in line with this rising inflation pattern. But there are several ongoing inquiries into claims that Coles and Woolies engaged in price gouging and anti-competitive behaviour. I won't bore you with the details of those inquiries today, but in terms of the allegations around price spiking and misleading discounts in terms of the federal court action, I spoke to Dr. Gavin Northey. He is a senior lecturer in marketing at Griffith University, and he described this tactic as brazen. He said pricing strategies can have a really powerful influence on consumers.
So from a psychology perspective, the actual effect is known as an anchoring effect. Some people might actually call it reference pricing, where the consumer focuses on the original price, effectively making the reduced price look more appealing.
So he's suggesting there that supermarkets use those was $10, now $5 price tags to give the appearance to consumers and perhaps unknowing consumers like you or I, the appearance that they're getting a bargain.
Exactly. And from a neuroscience perspective, Northey said there are several studies that have analysed images showing how our brains react to discounts and that the part of the brain linked to reward, quote, lights up like a Christmas tree when we buy something on sale.
Can you explain that to me? Are you suggesting there's something like neurologically going on?
Yeah, exactly. Whoa. So that when you go to the shops, you see something that you perceive to be a really good deal, especially say like a 2-for-1, 50% off or 75% off, that the way you feel in response to that deal is because the chemicals in your brain are firing up and firing off and being like, yay, wow, amazing, I feel good, I want this thing. I spoke to another expert on this topic, Melbourne University Associate Professor in Marketing, Anish Nagpal, who explained that discounts, like I said, get the neurons of our subconscious fired up. And he said that this response is pretty much out of our control.
Seeing a price that is discounted or something that is on sale, it's just basic human nature and psychology that if we see something that we feel is a good deal, I mean, neurologists have researched this, the pleasure centers in our brain get activated.
Something that I thought was also interesting that Anish brought up was the lasting psychological impacts after we buy something on discount. So he said we kind of trick our brains into thinking that we got a good deal. So we look for information to legitimize our purchase, and we kind of ignore any feeling to the contrary or that lowers the happiness around that deal. You know, we don't want to indulge in that guilt that maybe we made a bad decision or got ripped off.
And so if there's evidence then to say that, you know, these sales light up our brains, as you said, like a Christmas tree, how then do businesses use that to their advantage? Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, capitalism, you know, these businesses are looking for a buck. So
Exactly.
What are they doing here?
So Anish Nagpal from Melbourne Uni said there are several legitimate reasons why a supermarket might discount products. So, you know, needing to move stock, economic decisions, perishable items. But he said there are plenty of tricks of the trade. So for supermarkets, those tactics range from colourful discount tags to the physical design of a store. Now, Dr. Northey described, and I thought this was really interesting, the average supermarket as being like a casino. He said that these spaces are not designed for us to, quote, have a relaxing time.
The average supermarket is actually drawing people in. They want you to spend as much time as possible in there. The longer that they can keep you in there, the more likely it is that you're going to buy things, which is why milk is at the very back of the store. They want you to walk through everything else to get to the milk.
And so he's suggesting there that it's not just about the price tags, but that there's also a consideration behind the store layout. Is that right?
Yeah, so interesting. Like the way the shop is designed itself is tricking us.
I just thought it was confusing. Like I just thought I was not meant to know where the washing detergent ever was because it moves aisles all the time.
Yeah.
Turns out there's more to it.
Every time you go and look for it, you
Someplace
pass
else.
something else that you think, oh, that's a good
2 for
deal.
1 dairy milk. Don't mind if I do.
Don't mind it.
What other tactics have we heard about? And of course, I do just want to make clear here, we are not suggesting that, you know, any one supermarket is doing any or all of these things, but this is just kind of the psychology that sits behind some of the decisions that we might see play out, you know, across the board.
Yeah, and across retail generally, not exclusively supermarkets either. But looking at price tags, Anish Nagpal said that there's something called the left digit effect, which I found really interesting. Now, this is when something is priced as $9.99 instead of $10.
I always think about this.
So there's no real value difference in those two numbers, but it can make a deal look more attractive.
Huge in my brain.
Because we read from left to right. So 9 is lower than 10. So if the first number you see is 9, it doesn't matter if it's followed by 99 cents, you kind of psychologically believe that it's somehow cheaper. Now, that's what the left digit effect is. But even font size on a price tag can be influential. There's also merchandising tactics which play a role in the psychology of our purchases. And Nagpal used Aldi as an example, and he referenced how everything is crowded on the shelves of an Aldi store.
The way the products are organized and so cluttered, put very close to each other, signify reduced price, discounted pricing. Sometimes that is real, of course, and there are economic reasons for it, but it also plays into the psychology of it.
Similarly, if retailers have products really spread out, fewer items on display, it can create that kind of feel of higher quality or exclusivity, and that can trick us into thinking a higher price might be justified. If you walk into a boutique where there are 3 items of clothes on the racks and everything feels very clean, sometimes you naturally go towards thinking, oh, well, this must be an expensive store.
Is there anything that we, the consumers, can do, I guess, to avoid being overly influenced by these tactics? I think it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to, you know, be living in a cost of living crisis and feel like you want a deal always.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, yes, but Dr. Northey said a key issue is that many consumers just have way too much on their plate to try and outsmart these kind of deceptive tactics. So even though individuals might think they're really knowledgeable about a product or the modern world, as he described it. You know, he said we're all so busy, we'll often just rely on situational cues like discount signs to form the basis of our product decisions.
I resonate with that.
Yeah.
I feel like they're doing the signposting for me, and that all I need in life is signposting.
Yeah.
And that's a really useful thing for me to understand.
Oh, you can completely understand. I mean, I'm sure there are so many people listening to this who relate exactly. But next time you do feel overwhelmed at the supermarket, try and remember there are so many external factors at play that are aimed to influence you. And it can be a disorientating experience, and really that is by design. Northey recommends going to the supermarket with a list. It sounds simple and obvious, but he said that a goal-orientated shop can really reduce the potential of falling into a trap of, you know, discount offers that might be available, but on products you really don't need.
One thing that just kept coming up while we were talking about this was, like, can you ever trust a sale? Like, is this kind of a universal thing?
Well, the good news here is that good deals are not a 100% myth. So there are lots of reasons why a product could be discounted for a genuine reason. So that could be to get rid of excessive supply, perishables, as we mentioned earlier. You know, maybe a new product shipment is arriving, so a retailer needs to get rid of the old product. One tip that Professor Nagpal had for consumers was, if they can, pause and think about why something might be discounted. So, you know, is it a holiday or seasonal sale, end of financial year? Is there a new version of a product coming out so the old one is cheaper? Is it like a one-day clearance promotion that you know will end tomorrow? So just try to remember those legitimate reasons for a sale, and, you know, that can help kind of alleviate some of the anxiety around whether or not you're being taken for a ride. But as the experts told me, if something seems too good to be true, unfortunately, it probably is.
Thank you for taking us through that. I do think that, you know, it is interesting to bring it back to the personal and back to us. We have spoken about supermarkets so often on this podcast, and I think, you know, it can feel quite detached and it can feel like just another news story. But this is something that matters to, I'd say, each and every one of us. And certainly, you know, we'll be keeping an eye on this ACCC case and understanding what happens from here. Woolies has said it will engage with the ACCC on the issue, while Coles has said it intends to defend the action. So there's a lot that will come from this. And now that I understand the psychology behind it all, I am absolutely fascinated. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Daily Aus. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, we would love you to hit follow. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can hit subscribe and you'll never miss another video. Have a brilliant Monday, and we'll be back again tomorrow.